Hey everyone, welcome to Flatirons Church Online. My name is Jonathan. I am so glad that you've chosen to join us today. If you're only able to connect with Flatirons Online, do a couple of things. Follow us on social media, subscribe on YouTube, and a cool way to connect with us is to text the word NEXT to 80857. We won't spam you, but we want to send you a couple of encouraging text messages throughout the week. And what's really cool about the texting is it's texting, and you can text us back. You can ask a question, ask a prayer request, or just share something encouraging. And we have a team standing by that would love to connect with you. If you're in the Denver area, we'd love to see you at one of our locations. We have 5 locations across the Front Range, and we have a 6th location opening in early 2026. You'll be learning more about that soon. Well, we're in a new series today, and men, I want to just speak directly to you for a minute. Lean in during this series. Women, don't bail on us, but if you have a man in your life, an important man in your life, send this message to them. Well, thanks again for joining us today. We have a great service ahead of us, so let's jump into worship.
So I've been doing this like almost 42 years, 22 years as a youth pastor, and then I'm just doing youth ministry for old people now. So, I would call last Thursday night one of the top 5 moments of ministry in my life. Like God was palpable, like you could he's right here. And all I did is tell a little bit of my story. You know, when you tell your story, we'll get to the chairs, all right? When you tell your story, you give permission to somebody else to tell their story that it's safe. And so I just shared my testimony and my wrestling match with God, because when I was 19 years old, he called me to be a pastor, and we had a fight on a curb behind my girlfriend's dorm. And I don't want to be a pastor. Christians are mean, and I lost that, and that's why I'm here. I lost the battle. But here's what I told those students, and some of you know my story, but if God can reach down into this Indiana, where I grew up, right, and get this poor, sexually abused, drunk, pothead, sexually immoral kid, and pull him out and say, I want to use you to change the world, I said, think what he could do with you. And I lost track of the number of students that came up and whispered in my ear, that's my story, that's my story, that's my story. Shame keeps us in prison. And I saw students get set free and not just walk out of that jail cell. It's like, I don't want anybody to have to go through that by themselves. So I want to be a pastor. I want to be a missionary. I want to be a youth pastor. I want to be a worship leader, right? And I tried to talk them out of it for a while. Some of you just gonna need to go doctors and lawyers and engineers and stuff like that, But some of you have a call on your life, and 300 students walked forward and said, here I am, God, use me. So I don't know if any of those students that made that decision are in all of our campuses, would you just stand up if that was you? And can you just give it up for these young men and women? And they're back there too, right? Yeah, they're everywhere. So proud of you, so proud of you. Oh, I could talk about that all night. All right, so hey, let's jump into this, all right? You came back. And next week you're gonna be like, I'm not coming back this week because I'm gonna make so many people mad today. So anyway, so welcome back to week 2. It's a 3-week men's series, and it's also a parenting series where we're using this metaphor of 5 different, they're non-optional chairs that all of us, man, woman, child, we will sit in throughout this journey called life, all right? And each one of these is symbolizing a season or some crucial lesson or truth that we must learn along the way. We have to internalize it, and then we have to apply it to our lives. And so here's some key truths that we looked at last week. I don't have time to review all that, so if you missed it, go back and watch it, but that we must keep in mind at all times, but especially as parents raising children who are going to be prepared to be all that God has in mind for them. Very, very quickly, all right? Go back to last week, again, if you missed this, but these chairs represent a journey of moving from one place to another, from childhood and immaturity towards adulthood and maturity. And Paul, who writes a book called 1 Corinthians, he says, as you grow up, your love has to grow up, right? And when your love grows up and God's building this love inside of you, this is what love does, and this is what this kind of love demands. Look at this. He says, as you're growing up and the love's maturing in you, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, because I was a child. I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, and then something changed. When I became a man, when I became an adult, I gave up. I made a choice to give up childish ways. So Paul says this, he says, in order to move from childhood to become, and I'm talking to men and women, but I'm gonna talk to men directly in this, all right? So to move from childhood to becoming a loving man, husband, and father, in order to fight for and protect all that God has entrusted to you as a man, husband, father, that man, he must, Paul's talking about himself, but all of us, we must choose to give up and let go of childish ways so that I can take hold of something better. But here's the thing that's also has to be understood, just logical, okay? That boy down here, right, that little girl down here, they don't know how to do that. I don't know how to let go of that. It just doesn't happen. That child must be taught, must be shepherded so that he or she can make that choice. And I was thinking about this week, I think the reason that the Bible uses that word shepherd so much is because shepherds lead from the front, and the sheep follow them because I trust his voice. As opposed to like a cowboy that gets behind the herd and cracks the whip and drives them where he wants them to go because they don't want to get hurt. They're running from the whip. See, shepherds, parents, we have to lead our children. My mantra is this: leaders go first, right? We must demonstrate to them, this is where we're going, kids. This is what it looks like. This is what it does, and this is what it doesn't do. And that word discipline, all right, is the same word for training. And training usually means doing something over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes like the new normal, the new muscle memory. Okay, riding a horse, it's at least 2,000 hours till you don't suck at it, right? Throwing a baseball, you just don't throw it once and go, I'm going pro, you know? It's like over and over and over and over, lots of reps. And that's true physically, but it's also true spiritually. Hang on to that phrase, we're gonna end with that. It's true physically, it's also true spiritually and in character building. Sometimes parents, you're gonna get this, right? Sometimes you feel like, no, do it again, do it again. How many times have you said to your kids, how many times do I have to tell you? Right, and here's the answer: more than you ever imagined you have to say. And it's right, because it's called training. And the more important it is that you're trying to teach, usually the longer it takes for them to learn it. And why is it so important to lead our children in this direction? Here's a really sobering thought, right? So last year, Dr. Crawford Loritz was here. He spoke at a marriage conference and spoke at the weekend, spoke at a men's conference, all right? Here's what he says. Look at this. He says, the essence, like, get your phones out. This is gold. You're gonna all remember it. No, you won't. You're ADD like me. So the essence of parenting is to prepare our children for a future of which we will not be a part. See parents, in the repetition of day-to-day life, right? And I'm gonna use the word unintentionally, we unintentionally fall into this mindset that there's gonna be plenty of time to get that done. You know, we'll get to that after this urgent thing that needs attention. But the truth is, there's another urgent thing tomorrow. And another one, and another one, and another one. There's a whole list of, okay, this one time we're gonna do this, all right? But time is ticking, and you have a window of influence that is shrinking. And it will get smaller and smaller and smaller over time. I said this at some of the services, but not all of them last week, but I read one really sobering statistic that when your child turns 13, you've used up 75% of the hours that you get with them in this life. And it's not a bad thing. Healthy children are supposed to grow up to be healthy adults who move out of your house, away from their parents, establish their own lives and families, and hopefully you'll still have a great connection and relationship with them wherever they live, but your influence will diminish and they'll have to stand on their own 2 feet and you won't be there, right? Hopefully, like we looked at last week, they'll stand firm in their own faith that you help them build. So 5 chairs, all right, 5 seasons of character and identity development that every person, every man must sit in and experience and embrace and then internalize in his journey through life with any hope of becoming a good, loving, safe man, king, husband, father. And I think every man in this room wants that, right? Now, here's a little disclaimer. Before we dive into this, I have to confess, I've created a problem for myself again. See, when we were putting this teaching schedule together months ago, I told the team, I think I can cover all these chairs in 3 weekends, all right? Then we'll have horse weekend, and then we'll move on to the fall calendar. And I was wrong, all right? So here are my options, all right? I can try to cram all 5 chairs into this week and next week, but here's what I think. I think that disrespects God's teaching. I think it disrespects the content that we're trying to unpack. I think it disrespects some of us who are desperately want and need to be prepared for the future, or some of us, we find ourselves in the middle of it right now and we need some help. And to be honest, there's a big chunk of the room, we're listening to this series and looking in the rear view mirror, and here's what we're sitting. We feel a little judged or guilty or something. I'm not doing that right. I didn't raise that, my kids, and I'm living with the consequences right now. What do I do now? Please know, if you walk out of here feeling with guilt and shame, you didn't get it from me or Jesus. but there is some conviction we got to look at hard, okay? So here's what I am gonna do. I'm gonna spend this week and next week on the first 3 chairs, all right? Because I think that's where a lot of us feel like my life's on fire right now. And then I'm gonna hold off on these last 2 chairs until later this fall, and then bring them back. Because last week I said these last 2 chairs, especially these on your far right here, they're so valuable and needed and missing in our world. Mentors and counselors and sages to come into our life, all right? So this week, all right, it'll be primarily high chair and touch on driver's seat, and then next week it'll be driver's seat and captain's chair. Is that okay? Well, I don't care. That's what we're gonna do. Okay, so as a reminder, all right, here are the audiences I'm talking to, all right? For high chair, all right, a lot of this will apply to parents. Today is gonna feel a lot like a parenting, message, because everybody on this half is either over in our kids ministry right now or sitting in our student ministry right now. So I wanna talk to parents, all right? And then next week, I'm gonna really lean into men. This is a men's series, but the biggest group that needs to lean in are men who are currently sitting in driver's seat or captain's seat. And you're asking this question. So men, here's my challenge for the next 30 minutes, all right? You're gonna look as I'm talking about high chair and driver's seat, and you're gonna go like, I do that. I still act like I'm in a high chair. All right, so you gotta look in the mirror, okay? Where does this show up in my life? I'm not in that seat, but did I miss something and it's coming out right now? And not quietly or passively, it's landing on everybody around me, okay? So here we go. So high chair, all right. Chair number 1 is high chair, and the little monster who sits in this chair is here's their world out view, right? Me for me. Me for me. Any parents of toddlers like this? Yeah, they're just so selfish, right? And it sounds narcissistic, but in this case, it's okay. It makes sense. As a young child over here, you actually believe you are the center of the universe because you don't know anything about the universe. You just know how you feel. And most of the time, you're just scared because it's all new and it's all overwhelming. Everything is about you, how you feel, what you want, because all you know and really care about is you. Now, the scary part about that is when you're the center of the universe, that makes you feel very, very alone. I have a theory. I might not be right, but I think I am right. So I think I know why babies cry so much. I know what I want and I can't get it. I know how I feel, I can't say it. I'm experiencing new things and they feel scary, but I don't know how to defend myself. And everything's just overwhelming. But over time, they meet these 2 big people, mom and dad, all right, who are bigger than him or stronger than him. And in his moments of fear and insecurity and facing the unknown, they use their size and strength for him and he feels safe. Make sense? Now, all this makes sense in the opening months of a baby's life. There's safety and security and comfort in, if I throw a fit, these people will rearrange their lives to provide and protect me, all right? And that's a good thing. But over time, as we get into our 3s and 4s, that good thing in the developing mind and ego drifts towards this. I'm actually the master and they're my slaves. And if they don't do what I tell them to do, they will be punished, all right? And there's actually a developmental term for this. It's called high chair tyrant. So some of you can call your husband that this week. Don't. All right, so have you ever noticed that we let little kids get away with stuff just because they're cute? Right? Because if they weren't cute, we'd be calling the police. It's right? And we laugh it off, and a toddler screams or throws something, they're going, oh, you're right. But here's the problem. If that behavior never gets trained out of them, they don't grow out of it, they just get taller. Right? That same toddler becomes the teenager who slams the door, a college student who blames everybody in their life for all their problems, a grown man who can't take no for an answer. Cute is not a character trait. And if we don't teach them that tantrums don't control the room, they'll keep on trying to control every room they walk into for the rest of their lives. Have you ever met that kid? Ever been stuck on a flight from Atlanta to Denver with a 4-year-old spawn of Satan? We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, we wrestle against demonic forces. Well, I met him on a plane, his name's Timmy. And Timmy was losing his mind, right? I just hear it from 3 rows back, I want dinosaur nuggets. And he's just screaming like, give me my nuggets. And mom, she looks over at Timmy, I could hear all of it. She goes, it's okay, Timmy, those are big feelings. I heard her say, if those feelings were a color, what color would they be? And Timmy's like, blank you, I want my blanket nuggets, right? And hey, mom and dad, listen, right? You built that. And you think that's bad, wait till Timmy is 16 and he wants his nuggets, right? I'm gonna pick on Timmy all morning long because he's a tool, all right? So parents, we live under this romantic assumption that when we spoil our kids, and give our kids everything they want and wish every time that they stomp their foot or cry or scream, we're communicating love and support, but we're not. What we're communicating is you're important and nobody else is. So do what you want and act like you want to act without any thought or consideration of how it might affect, cost, or land on other people. It doesn't matter. The only thing matters is you get what you want when you want it, and everybody on the planet exists for that purpose. We unintentionally train our kids to believe the world will rearrange itself for them. They don't like dinner, we'll cook them something else. They don't like the coach, we'll call the principal. But eventually the world's gonna push back and go, no, get your own nuggets. No shortcuts, no special treatment. And when that comes, it won't just break their expectations, it'll break them. Because they were never trained for reality. We thought we were loving and protecting our kids from hard things, but we were actually preparing them to be crushed by life. That's not what we've set out to do, but this is where it goes, right? You keep playing that game, here's what it looks like. When Timmy gets older and his marriage hits a rough spot, you'll rip into his wife. And Timmy will go find another woman who'll do what he says. And when Timmy gets a DUI and loses his job, you'll pay his bills, let him move back into your basement and play video games, right? Because the world's been unfair to my baby. Why? Because way back here, you taught Timmy that he ought to get what he wants when he wants it, that other people exist to serve and meet his needs, and when he throws a tantrum, he gets what he wants, at least short term. And someone else will always pay the cost and pay the consequences and clean up his diaper and his mess. Now please hear this when I say like, don't let him throw tantrums. I never said, big boys don't cry. Save that email, right? They do, they should cry. What I'm saying is that we must train up our little boys to know that whatever emotion they are feeling doesn't give them permission to inflict it on everybody around them. Hitting, kicking, throwing, hurting. Again, 3 or 4 year old, it's annoying. A 30-year-old, people get hurt. I was talking to a friend of mine, she's on staff, she has 3 kids under the age of 7. She says, sometimes I have to take my 7-year-old son and put him in timeout because he feels really big emotions and his brain can't keep up with his body. His body responds and he's reasoning like a child still, right? So she has to sit him in a chair until his logic can catch up. Otherwise he's gonna take it out on his brothers and sisters. That's a wise mom. She's not punishing him. She's putting him in a space like, hey, let's pull all the pieces together. We're not gonna take it out on your sister, right? See, when you fight all your kids' battles for him or her, right? With the coach, with the teacher, with their buddies, you think you're protecting them. You're advocating for them, you're providing for them, but you're actually, what you're doing is you're keeping that child, a weak baby who can't take care of himself in your mind, and here's the message he'll take on later, He'll always be a weak boy who can't really make it on his own unless mom and dad step in and fight my battles for me, and that by definition is a weak man. See, here's the way that God has wired up a man's mind, all right? I know this because this is my brain, all right? Our question will always be, number one question, am I enough? Am I strong enough? Am I rich enough? Am I capable enough? Am I worthy enough? Am I good enough? And if you can't find those answers in the first 2 chairs over here, 13, 14 years old of his life, later when he reaches a level of independence like high school or college age or 20s or 30s, and he still thinks in the back of his mind that he's a weak little boy that can't make it without his parents, he'll either surrender to that fact and that's his life, or he'll make a whole lot of bad decisions, usually involving violence, sex, and finances, and he will use everybody around him to prove what he needed to work out way back here. Who am I and what's my value and what's my place? And I know here's what every parent thinks about their child. Well, they shouldn't feel like that. They shouldn't think like that. They should know they're enough. Write this down. They don't. We haven't known that since the garden, right? Right? Part of the reason is that we parents treated him like a baby. And we need to start treating our children like a man in training. I've worked with so many 20, 30, 40-year-old high chair tyrants over the years, working their way through multiple marriages, multiple job changes, multiple addictions because they bumped into a world in which they're not the center and were met with, hey, I'm not your mom. Get your own dang nuggets. You don't talk to me that way. I'm not your servant. I'm not your slave. I'm not your maid. That's not gonna work here. This is over. You're fired. Call an attorney. Hit the road. This is where it goes. And this is where it's gone for some of us. So all that seems like an extreme exaggeration, which you go like, my Timmy would never do that. I hope you're right? Just in case, here's what we're gonna spend the rest of the time, all right? What are a few like of the big aha learnings, milestones that we might wanna build into Timmy in the high chair and moving into the next chairs? And remember, our goal is to move from me for me, moving on to me with others, and eventually me with God. All right, everything has to be learned in these first two chairs, and then it builds and builds and builds onto the next chairs. Now, parents, you are training up a boy to become a man. You're forming his character, you're creating a value system that will become the why behind why and what he does and doesn't do for the rest of his life. So I wanna throw out some fundamental truths and values. You can write them down. I would take a picture of the screen, all right? And here's what, all right, I really challenge you to be really, really careful with this. But on your ride home today, parents, look at each other and go like, we probably need to talk about this. Or how about this? You're thinking about having kids, or you're a high school student right now. I want you to look at this and go like, what are the values? What are the things that are coming out of me and what might need to change, okay? So let's start with the big rocks that must happen in chairs 1 and 2. You're gonna wanna take notes because this is gold. I've already preached this once, so it's pretty good. All right, here's the big umbrella over everything. Honor, respect, and obedience to authority. This is what we have to learn in these first two chairs. All right, so I'm gonna give you some truths about what that looks like played out. And these might be the new, I don't know, you should write them on the wall of your house if you want to, okay? Here he goes. Truth number 1, we are a family. You're an important part of our family, you're just not the most important part. You're not unimportant, you're just not in charge. We have to teach our children this. How's that play out? How do you know this value is present and being lived out in your family? So I'm gonna throw something out. I ran it by some staff people and they looked at me like, you're insane, all right? And it's gonna be absurd, but I just want you to think about what your family could look like if you practice this. It's called, ready for this? First time obedience. Jim, you're so out of touch with reality. Nope, you are. Listen, we've all done it. We're all guilty. I've done it, right? We're all guilty of this. Here's what we do. We tell our children to do something like clean your room, nothing happens. So we tell them again, they go, okay, I'll get to it. Nothing happens. Eventually we get to, I'm not gonna tell you again, nothing happens. Okay, this is the last time. I'm gonna count to 3, 1, 2, 3, nothing happens. Timmy, I'm gonna stick with Timmy the whole day, all right? So Timmy, I mean it. And see, Timmy's smart, you don't mean it. And then mom throws this card, wait till your dad gets home, and then dad walks in the door and he's the instant bad cop, or he's just as tired as mom is, and he throws a few commands and threats at Timmy, but doesn't follow through with them and nothing happens. Timmy is a child, he's 3, he's 13, all right? The parents are teaching this lesson, right? We don't value, honor, respect, or obedience to authority in this house, and we don't expect you to honor, value it either. That's the lesson Timmy experienced. And Timmy will carry that with him to the next chair. So here's what I'm gonna throw this out, right? Just think about how your house would be if this. How about this? Timmy, clean your room before dinner. Yes, sir. And then he does it. And if Timmy doesn't clean his room in the time and the manner that you told him to, right? There must be consequences. No clean room, you're not eating dinner. There's no screen time, there's no anything until that room is clean. And the point's not a clean room. This is a life lesson that your child will have to deal with for his or her entire life. Remember last week, okay? The definition of adolescence is wanting all the privileges of being an adult without any of the responsibility, okay? So here's what we have to teach our children. Parents, you better write this down, all right? You're right. With every privilege comes responsibility, right? And if you won't take the responsibility, then you lose the privilege. Otherwise, disobedience to authority has no consequences. Nothing happens. Why would I do what you say? And eventually we obey authority, not because we're avoiding bad consequences, but because we have a greater understanding of a greater good that's trying to be accomplished in our life. But that is a learned understanding. It has to be taught and trained and then corrected when it's off. And listen, newsflash, children don't intuitively have a greater vision for the common good of their family or their own life. So I was listening to a teacher probably 20, 25 years ago teach about this. Here's a slight modification to this value, all right, about first-time obedience. It goes like this. Hey, Timmy, I want you to mow the yard on Saturday. Yes, sir, Dad. May I ask a question? So Timmy has already indicated, I'll obey what you told me to do because you're dad and I'm your son, right? First-time obedience. That's not in question here. What he's asking for is clarification. Timmy, I want you to mow the yard on Saturday. Yes, sir, Dad. May I ask a question? Yes. Yesterday you told me I could go to the ball game on Saturday. Did that change? And honestly, something might have changed, and now the grass has to be mowed, all right? Timmy's not questioning dad's authority. He already said, I'll do it. He's just looking for understanding, and that's a reasonable ask. So dad, you might look back at him and go like, you're right, I forgot that I told you that. Go to the game. You can mow the yard on Sunday after church. Thanks, Dad. Side note, Timmy not mowing the yard isn't on the table. Or dad saying, well, I'll just mow it myself. Not an option. It's his responsibility. Right? Here's another one that goes with honor, respect, and authority. They get worse, just by the way, right? And some of you are gonna think I'm crazy, all right? And out of touch, and some of you are going like, this is gold, all right? It goes like this. Our family is a kingdom, not a democracy. You have a voice, not a vote. Followed by this, hey kids, watch how you use your voice in my kingdom. It's gonna get rough, here we go, right? How's that play out? Let me talk to the husbands and dads in the room. Be honest. If anyone else was to talk to your wife the way you allow your children to talk back to her, disrespect her, insult her, raise their voice to your wife, you would punch them in the face, and you oughta. But when your 10-year-old or your 15-year-old tells your wife to shut up or calls her a name or screams, I hate you, and slams the door, you might look up from your phone or the TV and go, hey, be nice back there. Or you might not do anything because they've just seen you do the same thing to her in front of them. And they're just living what they learned and seen modeled. So here, again, here's an aha moment. Like, dads, you are commanded in scripture to love, treasure, provide, protect, pursue your wife in a lifelong, we are one covenant. When it comes to your children, you're told to discipline them, train them up, and then at the right time, send them away, right? Dads, your kids need to know that you love them, but if they disrespect, dishonor, or disobey your wife, who you love more, you need to see to it that there's a memorable consequence that will discourage that behavior of ever repeating. And your wife needs to know you have her back. I had conversations after church last night. I didn't get any criticism on the parenting. They're still writing their emails, I'm sure, but the only one was, how do I get my husband to defend me? There's a flip side of this, ladies, buckle up, all right? Wives, moms, don't criticize, insult, embarrass, or shame your husband in front of his children. It won't go well. If dad and Timmy are over here, they're going at it over mowing the yard, don't take Timmy's side in front of Timmy. Don't tell your husband, oh, lighten up, it's just a stupid yard, he can mow it another day. Why are you always so hard on him, right? Or this, well, I didn't know you told him to mow the yard, so he asked me and I told him he could go to the game. So I said, yes, so just let him go. Instead, mom, how about this? You look at Timmy and go, did you just try to play me against your dad? Now there's no game at all and you can mow the yard right now. Now time out, mowing the yard's not the issue. Nice landscaping is not the highest goal of our home. Honor, respect, submission to authority are what's being learned here, for better or worse. And what they learn here will transfer over how they respond to God later. That's where it goes, right? When God gives them a command they don't like, understand, or interferes with what they had planned on Saturday, I'm not gonna do it. Parents, your child is learning to understand and work the system, and he's coming at it from a me for me viewpoint, hopefully moving to a me with others viewpoint, which will become his or her me with God viewpoint. But before they get there, they will play parents and authorities against one another to get what they want. Your children aren't evil. Most of your children aren't evil, all right? They're children. And in the moment, short term, they won't like it. But when they run into a united front of mom and dad on the same page, there is long-term security and peace in that. They're stronger than me, and I can get under that umbrella. Remember, I'm choosing long-term holiness over short-term happiness for my child. And mom, dad, you're not always gonna agree with the call that your spouse made around your children, but you have to take that offline in private and work it out, and then walk back into the room and say, we decided. It's not dad got his way or your mom talked me into it. No, we're your parents and we're a team, and we decided this is what's gonna happen, right? And it will begin to register in your child. This isn't working. Like my strategy to divide and conquer just hit a wall called my parents are on the same page. I might need to modify my strategy. All right, so we're gonna go faster. I wanna throw in one and then actually it's two more, all right? And this one you can write off as my opinion, kind of like Jim's on a soapbox up there. Here, I am, all right? As we're talking about moving from high chair to driver's seat to captain's chair, I think this one will explain why we have such a culture of fragility, fear, weakness, and insecurity on one hand, and an out of your mind, adrenaline rush, risk-taking culture on the other, especially with our next gen, right? Here's where I believe it comes from and what we need to do to change. Now you can call this whatever you want, Pastor Jim's old fart ranting. I don't care, all right? I'm a little nervous, here we go, ready? Stop raising your children in bubble wrap, especially your boys. I'll explain that. I'm not saying we should go back to when I was a child. When I was a kid, there were no helmets for bicycles. There was no airbags in my parents' car. My dad's dashboard was made out of metal. Right? There were no padded playgrounds. Our slides were made out of sheet metal that reached the temperature of the sun in the summer. And right? Anybody been on that playground? Right? And if you fell out of the swing or the monkey bars, you didn't land on a mattress. You landed on gravel or blacktop. And here's one, and this is gonna really offend some of you, all right? And none of my buddies who went to the pool with me all summer ever showed up in long sleeves, a hat, earplugs, nose plugs, a floaty vest, and every inch of their skin, exposed skin, covered in white paint. That we just didn't do that. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just thing. Anyway, try this sometime. Just go to a local playground or pool and just watch. Not in a creepy way, not with binoculars, don't do that, right? They'll arrest you, and they probably should, right? But just in the mall or wherever you're at, airport, just study modern day parenting. All right, again, let's pick on Timmy. Let's pick on Timmy's parents, okay? Go to a playground, here's what you'll hear. Timmy, be careful. Timmy, that's too high. Timmy, don't get hot. Where's your water bottle? Timmy, don't get dirty. Don't get dirty. You're at a freaking playground. But I've heard that. A while back, I was walking by a creek up in the mountains with a couple of my grandkids, and one of my grandsons, he slipped and his foot went in the water and got covered in mud. And he looked up at me with tears in his eyes like, am I gonna get in trouble? And I just looked at him and I just stuck my foot in the mud puddle and go, let's go, you're fine. He's like, oh, all right. See, we're raising kids who are afraid to get dirty. When they come in from the backyard with a skinned knee or an elbow or, God forbid, a splinter, right? They get the same response from their parents as if they were bitten by a snake or a cancer diagnosis, right? So the kid cries more because I know it hurts, but according to my parents' reaction, I might not live through this. Come here, baby, right? Let's talk boys, all right? Boys are supposed to get dirty. How dirty? Like you have to hose them off before they come in the house, kind of dirty. And if you don't want their expensive shoes to get dirty, buy cheaper shoes. Listen, getting the wind knocked out of you because you jumped off something too high or getting a bloody nose from wrestling with your buddies isn't always a bad thing. Boys are supposed to wrestle and compete against, here we go, come on. You found your amen section now, let's go, all right? Boys are supposed to wrestle and compete against other boys. And I am not advocating for bullying, right? But from beginning of time, part of the initiation of boys becoming men always involves squaring off with their peers. But we're ready to call the police or the principal if Timmy comes home crying because Johnny at school hurt his feelings. See, here's a general rule. Some of you are gonna like it. It's gonna be your new mantra at your house. This is how I was raised, and this is how I try to raise my kids. We just had one phrase, one question, all right? Bleed, die, or vomit. Right? If one of my kids came in the house whining or crying or complaining about not getting their way or they didn't pick me or that's not fair, our response was bleed, die, or vomit. Are you bleeding? No. Are you gonna die? No. Are you about to vomit? No. Then go outside and work it out, you're fine. Right? That's not very, it's so caring. Parents, part of our job description is managing what I would call, right, didn't do a slide on this, controlled failure. Meaning we have to allow our kids to put themselves in places where failure and consequences might happen. I'm not saying be stupid and neglectful, but even science says that the way that our immune systems get stronger is by exposing them to different germs, so we build up systems in our bodies to deal with it in the future. The way to get stronger is to overload your muscles. You don't want to get crushed, you don't want to rip a muscle out, but we have to push new limits in order to grow. I believe we're robbing our children from building any type of resilience, perseverance, stamina, or problem solving because we don't want our kids to ever experience pain or frustration, right? Or loss or trauma. Again, I'm not talking about trauma and neglect. I mean, learn a lesson because they experience the consequence of taking the corner too fast on their bike. That's a lesson. They'll never push that limit if mom is always hovering on the front porch yelling, slow down, slow down. Like, let them ride. I was talking to a friend yesterday who couldn't come to church because his kid fell off a bike and hit his head. So it's kind of ironic. But anyway, but here's the other thing, all right? If they do crash their bike, if they skin their knee or they get their feelings hurt from another kid, and your response is come in the house and let mommy get you a juice box and some processed food and you can watch YouTube for the rest of the summer, you just taught them don't take any risks, don't push yourself, you don't need to be strong. You just sit in the AC and be safe. Our kids, you know what? I don't want to come across as an expert. I violated all of this in my parenting. This is the Me Too part of this, okay? But our kids are patted, sanitized, and bubble wrapped into weakness. We hover, we manage, we soften every blow, but here's the truth. Your son, ready? Your son is supposed to fall off the monkey bars. He's supposed to get a bloody nose wrestling with his friends. That's not bad parenting, it's controlled failure because life's gonna hit him harder than any swing set. And when it does, he needs to have a category for pain that doesn't end in panic and just a pile on the floor. Your job is not to keep him safe from everything. Your job is to raise someone who's strong enough to stand when it gets hard. Amen. All right, one more thing. So this is the controversial one. So you can leave now if you want. There's not a song at the end. I'm just gonna pray and we're gonna go home. Here we go, ready? Not everyone is a winner at everything, and not everybody should get a ribbon. Some of you are like, Timmy, it's okay. Listen, if you aren't good at something, you shouldn't get a ribbon. Here's what you should do, all right? One of two things, all right? You could practice harder until you get good at it, or two, you could go find something else that you're good at, but you're not serving your child well when you tell him or her they can be anything that they want to be, and here's a participation ribbon as proof. You're propping up something that's not true, which they will eventually run into, and you're robbing them of finding the one thing they could actually go get a blue ribbon in if they weren't living under this illusion that there's a high draft pick and a shoe contract in their near future. Listen, play sports, play games because it's fun, all right? Just don't lie to them thinking you're building their self-esteem. You're actually setting them up for it to be shattered. Now, if you think that I'm full of crap and you're little Timmy special and needs bubble wrap, let me give you a scripture. Earlier I said that what's true in our physical world is true in our spiritual world. And here what we're gonna see is that what's true in our faith world is also how our children grow best. James chapter 1, it's almost at the end of the New Testament if you wanna find that. James chapter 1 says this, he says, count it all joy. So whatever about to happen, it's like we should have joy. This could be a good thing, right? Here's what's a good thing. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. When you crash your bike, when you don't get your way, when you have to obey, when you run into things going, you can't have it. I mean, all these things, they're frustrations, right? It happens in our faith. It also happens in our children, okay? It's considered all joy when you meet trials of various kinds. And here's why. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, endurance, and strength. That's what we're trying to grow, right? And steadfastness, endurance, has full effect that you may be perfect. Here's what perfect translates out of the Greek. Mature, initiated, fully developed, and complete, whole, lacking in nothing. Isn't that what we want for our kids? So here's the goal of every parent. High chair and driver's seat. God has entrusted you with this child to see them grow in endurance and be mature and be prepared, initiated into adulthood and be fully developed and whole, lacking nothing. And the only way for that to happen is for you to allow them, or maybe intentionally even put them in places where they will overcome trials, obstacles, frustrations, and even pain and disappointment. Not the kind that damages them, the kind that strengthens them to endure what's coming in their life, which will be really hard, but you won't be there. They'll have to do it without you. And our job as parents is to get them ready. And we can do it now in a pretty controlled environment, or you can throw them to the world and let the world do it to them, but it won't be controlled and it will not be kind. Now, that's a lot. So we put, get your phones out again. Put that QR thing up there. All right, so if you'll click on that or go to the church website, we put a whole lot of resources together. If you're raising kids on this side, you need to get on there like this afternoon and whatever's there, order it or whatever that is, okay? But also, I think some students should read some parenting books. Here's why. I just thought of this morning. Is because that's the target, right? Oh, that's what they're going for. They're not doing it perfectly, but that's what I need to be going for. So students, I don't know what kind of parents you had. I'm sure they did the best they could, but you have to take responsibility for your own life. Let me talk to some 30 and 40-year-olds. You're sitting here right now going, I do that. And your mom and dad are gone. So now you have to make a decision. What kind of man am I gonna be? And I gotta go back and relearn some things. So get on those resources and yeah, all right. Amen, anything, amen, right? At all our campuses, let's stand up. I'm gonna pray. I really wanna encourage you to do this. Maybe even before you leave whatever campus, whatever room you're in, is to look at each other and go like, hey, we're not on the same page, are we? If you want to almost guarantee that your kids are screwed up, parent them on different pages because they're caught in the middle, right? Maybe you need to have a conversation. So I'm gonna pray and then we're gonna be dismissed. There's no song because I preached a long time. But come back next week. We're gonna really lean into how all this falls on us as men. And God, I just pray right now, protection and grace and mercy for any conversations that are gonna happen. between a husband and wife, between a mom and a dad, even if they're divorced and they're parenting from different states, they still have to be on the same page. So I pray that there's grace and there's forgiveness, and nobody's accusing anybody of anything, because we're doing the best we can based on what we know, what we learned. But bring us together. And I really believe that when we get on the same page as parents, our marriage will get better. And our kids are desperately waiting for our marriage to hold on. They're looking for that unity in mom and dad. Even though they're gonna kick against it and push against it, there is just safety and security when mom and dad are strong together. I pray for that next gen. I'm tired of hearing this next gen is lazy and this and that and one. No, I witnessed next gen on this past Thursday, and it is alive and it's doing well. And they're gonna change the world, and they're gonna lead this church one day. So thank you for that. For whatever decisions they have to make, they have to look in the mirror and go, I can't blame my mom and dad anymore. I've got to take responsibility for my life. I pray you give them the courage to do that. Get in a small group with some other students, whatever that is, and make whatever changes by the power of your Spirit that need to be made. Lord, I love you. I love what you're doing in our families. I love what you're doing in this church. I love what you're doing in my heart. I can't wait to see what you're about to do. Jesus, I love you. In your wonderful name I pray. Amen. 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 All right, let's go.
Hey everyone, thanks again for joining us here at Flatirons Church Online. If you didn't know, we stream every weekend and we're dropping content throughout the week, and so be sure to subscribe to our channels. Now, if you want to support Flatirons and its ministry here, reaching people in a lost and broken world, we'd love for you to hit that Give Now button. Thanks again for being here, and we can't wait to see you either online or in person next week.